Hero,
Rhoda
Johnson, Jemidari Kamara, Tony Vandermeer, and Askia Torre. So thank you all for being here. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about the importance of just the Afro Latin diaspora for me and my understanding of it. People have often asked me when I go to different events, oh, what country are you from? And I kind of shyly say Connecticut because I'm not, I'm part of the Afro diaspora, but I'm not, distinctively from Cuba or Panama or anything like that. But I am very interested in this topic as someone who studied international relations, but from a very political standpoint, and my interests are more in the culture and the history and how those things come together to really understand how a specific group of people can be marginalized or written into or out of a country's narrative. So what I wanted to do is just read you a little bit of something that I wrote just a few years ago, but it still is very much part of why I'm interested in this area. So my interest and excitement for working with Encuentro stem from a desire for greater knowledge of the Afro Latin diaspora and the movements and challenges associated with this group, especially an understanding of the concepts of national identity, marginalization, and otherness. So I will start with one of the first experiences I had of coming into contact with the Afro Latin diaspora was the Schomburg Center in New York City. And I walked into the center, into a room further in the back, and saw a huge portrait of an Afro-Brazilian woman. And was a little bit shocked because my education to that point hadn't really included the Afro part of Latin American history. And that was in high school, and I went on to study more about it in college, but I still got to a point where I wasn't learning as much about the Afro part of the diaspora as I really wanted to. So my first course in Latin American politics was in the winter of 2004, when I was working towards my bachelor's degree, and wanted to learn more about the Afro Latin diaspora. One of the assigned books for the course discussed the Afro-Argentines in Buenos Aires, and actually talked about how one of the Argentine statesmen in the 1880s wrote that the banners of the African nations that once one used to see at the old carnival celebrations had been replaced by the flags of various French, Italian, and Spanish clubs and societies. So that kind of struck me as, I didn't know at that point that there had been this huge community of Afro-Argentines, so it's kind of like, well, that's interesting that there would have ever been flags of African nations represented in Argentina. So I continued, reading and did some research on it, and one of the first papers that I wrote was on, basically on a single word, blanqueamiento. And so as I continued my research for a short paper, I learned more about Argentine history. What has stayed through me throughout the years is this concept, blanqueamiento, which alludes to a strategy of whitening the population demographic through a concentrated effort at European immigration. It's often used to describe the formal processes of miscegenation and intermarriage, the expression gobernar es poblar, and Europeanization. The term is not specific to Argentina and has been used throughout Latin America to denote a process of mixing in order to achieve racial whiteness and homogeneity. It translates in English literally as bleaching or whitening. So that concept is also